Hey everybody, welcome back. We're doing content. I'm your host. My name is Professor Khalil Amani, and this is Khalil Amani's World 100. 100. Rocking my Alpha Phi Omega. That's right, I am a fraternity brother. Where's my fraternity plaque? Where is it at? Oh, it's way up there. Yeah. See, I accomplish things. When you got a backstory, you can show stuff like this. Yeah. I got a backstory. But welcome back for part 2. We're talking about Jezebel. I invite you all to go back and watch the videos. I actually this is probably the 4th video on Jezebel. If you want to understand Jezebel, the real deal, I invite you to go back and check it out. We're going to move right along. By now, some of you know that Jezebel was royalty. That Jezebel was a straight up queen. Queen. Yes, she was. Jezebel was something special. Reared in royalty without stain or blemish. Her vagina was pure and innocent. No man had been up in that thing until she married King Ahab. But I just want you to again, it's so amazing that a woman who lived about 750 years before Jesus Christ, a royal woman from the house of Phoenicia, a Phoenician woman / Sumerian woman, how she started out not with humble beginnings, but with a great childhood as the daughter of a king and a queen. 2,700 years later, today, when the name Jezebel comes up, it's negative, it's degrading, it's disgusting. Her name has been dragged through the mud of history, and most of you, turn that down, and most of you, and most of us, including myself once upon a time, had the understanding that this woman Jezebel was a bad woman. And I based my understanding of Jezebel simply and purely and merely on what the Bible says about her, what Jewish people wrote about her, and what later Christians would say about her. I mean, she's so demeaned, she's so degraded, that even in the book of Revelations, the last book of the Bible, she's damn near, I think she called a whore and some other names. Maybe we should just go to that. I'm coming off the cuff. Let me Google the scripture because I'm not sure where it's at, but we can find it. Jezebel, book of Revelations. Revelations 2:20. The New Testament book. They have done some craziness to that woman. That's right. Look what the book of Revelations has to say about this woman Jezebel. I get why I, in the past, and many of you, look at Jezebel as this whore Because it says right here, in the book of Revelations, the 2nd chapter, verse 20, it says, "Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou suffered that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. And I gave her space to repent of her fornication, and she repented not. Behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that committed adultery with her into great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds. And I will kill her children with death, and all the churches shall know that I am he which searcheth the reins and hearts. And I will give unto every one of you according to your works." Oh boy. Oh boy. That's what the Bible says about her. Calls her a whore. Says she fornicated. What is this? "Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee." Talking about the people. "Because these people they suffereth that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess," because she was a prophetess, "to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication." In other words, the Bible is admitting that the Israelites worshipped her and her religion. That the Israelites got into the goddess religions. They mad at Jezebel for what the children of Israel did. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? The Bible doesn't take into account that this woman Jezebel, from her mother's womb, was raised as a goddess worshiper. How is she to blame for that? This is the part of the story that the Bible is not telling. The Bible is simply pointing the finger at Jezebel because she was a prophetess of Asherah and a prophetess of Baal. But here's the thing. It's not like Jezebel grew up and decided to go against Yahweh, to go against Jehovah, to go against the God of the Hebrews. No. She was never raised as an Israelite. She was not an Israelite. She did not believe in Yahweh or Jehovah. She believed in the Queen of Heaven, Asherah. She believed in Baal, the bull god. And now she's being blamed for making some of the children of Israel practice her religion. Oh my. But now I want to go back and I want to talk about King Ahab and the position that he put himself in, the position that he put the Israelites in, and the position that he put his wife in. King Ahab was wrong off the rip and out of the gate. Why couldn't this Israelite king find an Israelite wife? How simple that would have been if he stayed within the cozy comfy confines of Israelite punani, Israelite vagina. Imagine how his life would have turned out if he wouldn't be thinking with his little head, but he was thinking with his little head instead of his big head. I mean, my God, there had to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of girls and women at King Ahab's disposal. You mean he couldn't find one woman that he could make his queen among the Israelites? Evidently not. So his first problem was, because the Israelites have this God called Yahweh or Jehovah, Yahuwah, Yahweh, Yahweh, I am that I am, Jehovah, whatever. His first problem was thinking that he could go over yonder, overseas, and take a wife from among the foreigners. I don't know, you could say he had jungle fever. Jungle fever. Even though Jezebel wasn't no white woman, because we are told by Flavius Josephus that Jezebel was the great aunt of Dido, the queen of Carthage, North Africa. That would make her ancestry and her lineage of color. But this was King Ahab's first problem. Not thinking rationally, thinking with his little head instead of his big head. Knowing that to bring a woman, a foreign woman, into the royal priesthood was going to cause a problem. He didn't think that out too well. Not only that, a woman like Jezebel, a young woman like Jezebel, a Phoenician slash Sumerian, they're closely tied together. They had a whole different, the Phoenician women had a whole different mentality than Israelite women. Israelite women were subordinate. Israelite women knew that they were second-class citizens, and Israelite women knew they had to stay in their place. Not so for Phoenician women. Phoenician women were like modern-day American women. They believed in equal rights and equal treatment under the law. And she wasn't reared under no damn stale, old, antiquated, and archaic Mosaic law, the 10 Commandments, or the 613 laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments. That's not what Jezebel knew. Jezebel, as a queen, as a princess, she would be more familiar with the code of Hammurabi or Hammurabi. Potato, tomato, potato, tomato. She would be more familiar with the Sumerian or the Babel or the Sumero-Babylonian laws known as the Code of Hammurabi. And when you study the Code of Hammurabi, women in those religious systems, they fared a whole lot better than Israelite women under the 613 laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments. They just did. The culture in which Jezebel was raised and reared, it would make her a strong and independent woman. Just based on her cultural, religio-cultural upbringing. I'm talking about Jezebel. Her religio-cultural upbringing had her as a first world citizen, reared as an autonomous figure, where she looked at men as her equals. She had a sense of strength about her based on the Phoenician and Sumerian culture in which she was raised. This is who Ahab decided to wife up. A strong single woman. Not only strong and single, but educated. Not only educated, but the daughter of a goddamn king. He didn't go to Phoenicia and grab any old scallywag chick off the streets of Phoenicia. He went and got royalty. He went and got the best piece of virginal poontang that Phoenicia had to offer. A young, unbetrothed queen, princess named Jezebel. Beautiful, strong, independent, educated, first world civilization. What do you think was going to happen when this woman Jezebel was thrown into a world where women were second-class citizens? A world where women knew their place. And so, when Jezebel when she leaves Phoenicia, when she leaves the land of the Zidonians, when she leaves the Phoenicians, after getting married to King Ahab, she takes all her stuff, she packs her Louis Vuitton luggage, and she takes a caravan of maids and butlers and prophets, because she was religious too. She was religious too. And she goes from Phoenicia by caravan to her new home, the palace in the northern kingdom of Israel. Talk about a culture shock. It was a culture shock. It was a culture shock for Jezebel when she got to Israel and saw the way women operated. She was like, damn, these women is living in the dark ages. But she was cool. She knew that there was going to be some cultural differences between the Phoenicians and the Israelites. Okay. But she was there as the new wife and newly installed queen of Israel. A foreigner ascends to become the second most powerful person in Israel. A foreigner. You know the hate was going to be there. And it was. You know there was a lot of talking behind King Ahab's back why he married her. What, he think he's too good for an Israelite woman? I mean, the bitch is fine, Oh, he got a looker. Oh, he got a dime piece. But we got dime pieces amongst the Israelite women. You know they were talking. She don't even have the same religion as the king and us. She's a goddess worshiper. My God. You know what those goddess worshipers do. You know what they do. Oh, they heard it. They heard about it. They heard what goes on in the churches of the goddess. And they heard correct. They heard correct. What went on in the churches of the goddess, what went on in the temples of the goddess, is a lot of sex. Straight sex, heterosexual sex. Gay sex, homosexual sex. Bisexual sex, sex, man and woman, man and woman, the whole 9 yards. And even some pedophilic sex. Young boys and young girls. I'm not here to judge a nation's religion. I'm not here to judge a people's understanding of the divinity at that period in human history, and you shouldn't either. That would be considered superimposing your 21st century mores and values and customs and culture on a culture from almost 3,000 years ago. That's not fair. That's not fair. So whether these people were having sex as worship and ritual, man on man, woman on woman, man on boy, woman on girl, woman on boy, man on girl, whatever they were doing. Over here, we're not judging that because I'm not in a position to judge another people's advent and understanding on the way to the divinity. And if you do, you are being culturally and religiously dishonest. Because shit grows and people learn as we go along in human history. That's just the way it is. So we're not judging whether they were gay or straight or whether they were into pedophilia or not. Looks like they were. But this is who the king of Israel chose to wife up. A beautiful, educated princess from among the Phoenicians. And she brought all of her religio-cultural baggage with her. See, you don't get this from reading the Bible. That's why when niggas talk about, I'm just a King James man, I just read King James. If it ain't in the Bible, if it ain't in King James, those are ignorant, religious, and historically lazy people. But I'm giving you the backstory and the context of the arrival of Princess Jezebel, who becomes installed as the queen of Israel, of the Israelites. When she came and when she wed and married the Israelite King Ahab, she brought all of her religious dogma, she brought all of her cultural window dressing, she brought her maids, she brought her butlers, she brought her religious texts, she brought her priests and priestesses, she brought her prophets. She came to Israel with the entourage of Phoenician culture. Now here's the beautiful thing about it. The beautiful thing about it, the beautiful thing about the arrival of Princess Jezebel becoming Queen Jezebel is that King Ahab, he welcomed her and all that she brought and all that she represented. He never once told her, now that you are a queen of Israel, you must drop, you must shake off the window dressing and trimmings of the goddess. You are no longer required to worship Asherah and Baal. You will be required to worship Yahweh, Jehovah. King Ahab never told her that. King Ahab accepted that his wife was a foreigner with her own set of religious values and standards. He did. And to that, I give King Ahab props. Because statistically today, when two people get married of different religions, they say about 20% of women convert to the husband's religion today. Ain't that something? If a Jew man and a Muslim woman marry today, if a Jew man and a Christian woman marry today, statistically 20% of the women of the new wives are going to drop their religion and convert to whatever the husband is. So I say kudos to King Ahab for not insisting that Queen Jezebel drop her religion and join his. Kudos to him. But it goes even further. What actually happened, and we have it, the Bible does confirm this fact. What actually happens is that when this princess Jezebel, this Phoenician princess who was a goddess worshiper of Asherah, who was the queen of heaven, spoken of in Jeremiah 7 and Jeremiah 44, the same queen of heaven, this same Phoenician princess Jezebel, who also worshipped the bull god Baal, when she comes and Ahab puts a ring on that finger and wipes her, a curious thing happens. Mind you, the princess Jezebel, she leaves her homeland. She leaves Phoenicia. And now she's around nothing but Hebrew Israelites. But a curious thing happens. What is that? Her husband, the king of northern Israel, Ahab, he takes a fancy to her religion. He says, I like what I see. And it is the husband, the king of Israel, that converts to the Phoenician religion of the goddess, his wife, Jezebel's. What a beautiful thing. I just said 20% of women today who marry a man of a different religion, they drop theirs and they convert to his. But in this case, there was something about Phoenician religion, something about goddess religion that made King Ahab give Yahweh and Jehovah the middle finger. I am going to renounce the religion of my forefathers, and I am going to start worshiping Asherah and Baal. Let's read about it. Shout out to the Bible for showing us that. Shout out to the Bible for showing us that. 1 Kings 16. It's right there. This is why Revelations, all that goo-gaw we read earlier about Revelations and that woman Jezebel, and she seduced. No. Everybody grown up in here. Did you hear me? I said everybody grown up in here. There wasn't no seducing. People just saw what the goddess was about, and they wanted in on some of the goddess action, the sex that is. Don't blame the woman. No. And so, it's right here in 1 Kings 16. Ahab marries Jezebel, and it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ithbaal, king of the Zidonians. Now check out what he did. And went and served Baal and worshipped him. Now Baal was the male consort of Asherah. Baal was one of the two gods that Jezebel worshipped. Jezebel worshipped Baal and Asherah. That's right. And this tells us, it's really quick. It skims over it, but it lets us know that right after he took Jezebel to wife, that he went and served. He dropped the Israelite God, and he went and served Baal and worshipped him. See? And it goes on. And he, the king of Israel, Ahab, and he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And check this out. And Ahab made a grove. And Ahab did more to provoke the Lord. What does this mean when it says Ahab made a grove? This is the female counterpart. A grove, when you see the word grove, it's talking about the queen of heaven, Asherah. And so we see that Ahab, not only did he worship Baal, he also worshiped the female, which was Asherah, grove. Let's go see that little letter T. Let's go see what that means. T in verse 33. It says, pagan shrine for pleasure. We're gonna remember this word grove, and let me prove that the grove, the Baal is the male, and the grove is the female goddess or the deity known as Asherah. Let me prove that. Let me prove that real quick, because the Bible's not gonna tell us. Let me grab, and this is off the cuff. This is off the dome. I didn't have this planned, but I got my books here, and I'm sure we can find what the hell is this grove? A grove? Who is the grove? What is the grove? What is that? Let's go. We're gonna look at one of our Bible dictionaries, and we're gonna see if we can get a little clarification on the king of Israel making a grove. What does that? What is that? I'm telling you, it has to do with the queen of heaven, Asherah, the female goddess. Let's see if we can find something here. Let's see. One of these books is going to tell us. It's not telling us in that one. Let's go to... Oh, we're going to find it. Oh, we are going to locate what the hell is this grove that Ahab built. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, G. We're going to look at all of our books and we're going to figure it out. I know what it is, but I want you to know what it is. I want you to see some scholarship on what the grove is. That way you don't be like, Khalil, he lying, G-R-E. Okay, we don't have it in this one. We're going to keep on going. We've just checked Oxford and we can't find it. We've checked Erdman's, we can't find it. Let me go to this one. I think if I go to Queen of Heaven, I definitely find it. But I'm just looking for the word grove itself. I'm looking for the word grove itself. I'm looking at now. We're in Erdman. I mean, we're in the interpreter's dictionary of the Bible. Let's see, grove. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, I found it. I found it. And so, when we go to the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible, volume E through J, we go and we look for the word grove, as we read in the Bible. Grove, King James Version translation. What does it say? Asherah. Whoa. So now we know that the grove in the Bible, the grove, hold on, yeah. Now we know when it says that Ahab made a grove, he made an Asherah, which is a communion with the female goddess Asherah. Got it? And Ahab made a grove. So now we know that Ahab, who is the king of Israel, he worships the male deity, Baal, and he worships the female deity known as a grove. And when we go to grove, it tells us Asherah. Got it? Asherah. Well, who the hell is Asherah? This is what many so-called Bible teachers can't do, won't do, and don't have the books at their disposal. Now, I bet you if we go back to Erdman's Bible Dictionary and look up Asherah and see if we can identify the grove with Asherah. Oh, I love this. It's like an Easter egg hunt. It's Easter. We're doing an Easter egg hunt. Asherah. All right, let's go. Asherah. We getting there. Asherah. Asher. Okay. You gotta love me what I'm doing here. So now we go. Oh, I lost my page. So now we go to the Erdman's Bible Dictionary scholarship, and we go to Asherah. I had it and I lost it. We're getting close to it though. Okay, and they actually have an entry for Asherah. And when we go to Asherah, it says the Hebrew name of the Amorite or Canaanite goddess. Goddess means it was a woman or a female, and the cult object dedicated to her. The King James Version consistently renders Hebrew Siri grove to identify both the goddess and the pole which belonged to her. Got it? Oh man, this is good stuff. And so now when we go back, this is what you didn't learn in church or in Sunday school. When it says that Ahab made a grove, he means he's paying homage to the goddess Asherah and her instrument, which is a pole, like a stripper pole. That's right. The grove is a stripper pole, but it's associated with the goddess Asherah. And we know that because we're reading it right here in the Urban's Bible Dictionary. The Hebrew name of an Amorite or Canaanite goddess, and the cult object dedicated. See, the cult object dedicated to her was a pole, aka a grove. The King James Version consistently renders Hebrew grove to identify both the goddess Asherah, and the pole, the stripper pole, which belonged to her. Got it? Woo! That boy good. That boy good. So now we know. Now we know. And now you know. When you read about the pole, not the stripper pole, but the pole, it is the accoutrement of Asherah. And when you read about the pole in the Old Testament, it's talking about Asherah and her pole. Or when you read about the grove, Grove, a grove, you're not reading about some kind of place where there's plants and shit. The grove represents Asherah, the goddess, and her pole. Yes, indeed. Let me just look up Asherah in this other dictionary. Just want to see what it might have to say for us. We have satisfied the subject, but let's just look. Asherah. Let's just look. Asherah. Yep. Here we go. A little something else for you. When we go over to the Oxford Companion to the Bible, it has an entry on Asherah as well. And it says the Canaanite mother goddess associated with lions, serpents, and sacred trees. The word Asherah in the Bible most often refers to a stylized wooden tree, aka the pole. The biblical writers generally condemn worship of the goddess, but there is evidence that many in Israel devoted themselves to Asherah, perhaps even worshiping her as a consort or a wife of Yahweh, the Israelite God. At several times, an Asherah stood. See, an Asherah is a grove, and Asherah is a pole. And Asherah stood in Yahweh's temple in Jerusalem. Wow. There were in the temple, moreover, vestals dedicated to Asherah, a compound in which women wove garments for her stature. And Asherah, or a pole, or a grove, also stood in Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. Yeah. There you go. That's enough. And so, there are three words. There are three words that are synonymous. And those words are a grove, a pole, and an Asherah. They all have to do with goddess worship. And this is the goddess that Queen Jezebel would worship from her infancy all the way up to ascending to the throne of the Queen of Israel. And so now, let's go back and read the King James Bible, and you will have an understanding of what the hell they talking about. And so when we go back to the beginnings of Jezebel, and it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the princess, the daughter of Ithbaal, king of the Zidonians. Now, comma, and he, meaning Ahab, went and served Baal and worshipped him, Baal, the male god. But it doesn't stop there. The next verse tells us more. And he, the king of Israel, Ahab, he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. Going on, and Ahab made a grove. He made a pole. He made an Asherah. This is proof that he also worshiped the goddess and not just the god Baal. We have gone over. We now know that the grove is Asherah and the grove is a pole. It is the pole of Asherah. And Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger and all these things. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Now here's the point, and here's the thing. Show me where Jezebel, the queen, had anything to do with all this. Nowhere in the Bible right here do we read that it was Jezebel that made the king of Israel worship Baal and make a grove to Asherah. As a matter of fact, we are told that he went after he marries Jezebel. It says that he went and served and worshipped Baal and the grove Asherah. It doesn't say that his wife seduced him. It doesn't say that his wife made him. It doesn't say that his wife insisted that he change religions and worship Baal and Asherah, the grove. It didn't say that. It's according to how we read this, he did this of his own free will, of his own volition. Now, was the queen influential? Of course she was. Because what had happened was the king, Ahab, he watched and saw how she practiced the religions of her homeland. And he liked it. As a matter of fact, he liked it so much. He liked it so much that he began to build monuments and statues for Baal, and he built a grove. In other words, he built a memoriam for Asherah. Ugh. Are you all following this? This is the beginnings of the Bathsheba Ahab debacle. But nobody put a gun to King Ahab's head and said, you're going to be a Phoenician goddess worshiper. No, 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 no. Nowhere in here, after we see that he marries Jezebel, if I accidentally say Bathsheba, I don't mean Bathsheba. I don't know why sometimes I say Bathsheba. I mean Jezebel, for the record. But in the reading of 1 Kings 16, when Jezebel enters the conversation we don't get the slightest inkling that Jezebel is pressing her new king to convert. We don't get that. No, 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 no. We are told that Ahab did this shit independent of his Phoenician goddess worshiping queen. He just observed how she practiced her religion, and he wanted in. And again, people, if you don't know what was appealing about goddess worship, I've said it, I'll say it again. If you don't know what was more appealing about worshiping Baal and the grove, Asherah, the pole, if you don't know why it was more appealing, let me tell you again. It is because in goddess worship, in Baal worship, in pagan worship, if you want to use that word, they believed 2,700 years ago, they believed that the greatest show of love to the goddess and to the god Baal was the act of sex. They believed that if you really want to show your veneration and adoration for the goddess Asherah and the god Baal, these Canaanite deities, gods and goddesses, if you really want to show that you are down with that religious perspective, you got to give up the booty, the dick, and the pussy. And again, I am not here to judge those people from damn near 3,000 years ago. That is not my job. My job is to let you know what was exciting. What was so exciting about the Canaanite deity Asherah, the grove, the one that rode on the pole, and her male consort Baal. What was so exciting that a king of Israel would forego, would shake off the shackles of Israelite religion and go and convert to his wife's religion? Now you know. Now you know. It was sex. When you went to the Israelite temple, the women sat in the back behind the men, and the men made these old ass prayers to Yahweh. You know, the Shema Yisrael, which is the Jewish confession of faith. Shema Yisrael Elohim Adonai. The Lord our God is one. Candles and shit were being lit. The shit was boring as fuck. It was like going to a Catholic church. Ain't nobody singing and shouting. Ain't no tambourines and drums. Ain't nobody catching the Holy Ghost. Ain't nobody doing the holy dance. It's just real somber. That's how the stale, static Israelite religion was. But oh my God, when the newly installed queen came to town and she began to erect sanctuaries and temples for Baal and for Asherah, the grove, and the Israelite people would walk by these goddess temples and hear the commotion inside. You know what they heard? Oh my God. Oh, fuck me. Oh, shit. Oh, I'm coming. I shit you not. And when these Israelites would hear the noise, the sex sounds coming from the Asherah Grove temples and the Baal temples, they would go to the door, they would go to the windows and take a look-see, peep their heads in. And when they saw chicks on bended knee When they saw dudes banging chicks doggy style. When they saw women on their backs with their knees touching their earlobes, catching a big one. When they saw young boys and girls getting sexually handled by other adults and other children. It was wild, man. It was wild. It was a wild sexual or orgiastic scene. Again, I'm not here to judge that. I'm just telling you why King Ahab switched sides. And as the word got around, that they was having some fun, some sexual fun amongst the Asherah religions, the Baal religions, more and more. What do you think happened? You know what happened. More and more Israelites, more and more Hebrews, more and more Jews. They had a mass exodus from the Yahweh cults to the Asherah cults. There was a breach and a gap forming. There was an apostasy, a great falling away from the 613 laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments of the static and stale Jewish religion, Israelite religion. They were falling away from that shit, and they were going over to the Asherah cults. They were going over to the Baal religions for some of that good old sex. If you were straight, you got straight sex. If you were bi, you got bi sex. If you were homosexual, you got homosexual sex. That was the lure and the draw. That was the lure and the draw. And this is what Queen Jezebel brought into the equation. She brought goddess worship and the homosexual sodomite cult god Baal into the mix. That's what she did. She brought it into the mix. She didn't bring it into the mix to try to convert Israel. No, she simply wanted to maintain the religion of her upbringing. That's all. She wasn't out there on the street corner like these Hebrew Israelites. She wasn't knocking on doors like the Jehovah's Witnesses trying to convert. No. There was no proselytization. Nobody was proselytizing. To proselytize, it means to go and get new converts. That's not what Jezebel was doing. She simply was practicing her own religion. And to put the icing on the cake, and she had no clue. She had no clue that her own king husband would want to take part in her religions. And so when Queen Jezebel said, "Oh my God, King Ahab, you want to worship with me? You want to go down to the grove with me?" And he go, "Yeah, oh yeah." And they was all fucking and sucking. They was all fucking and sucking. But what I want you to understand is that they weren't just fucking and sucking for sexual gratification and sexual licentiousness, as the Bible and later, Christian apologists would try to make it up. They temple whores and cult prostitutes. That's entirely the wrong language. It's ethnocentric language that's not found outside of the Bible's polemic against the practice of what the Canaanites were doing. That's what the Jews and the later Christians would name it. They would name it temple prostitution, cult prostitution. That's what they would name it. But that's not what it was. It was paying reverence and veneration and adoration to the goddess Asherah and the god Baal. That's what the sex was about. It wasn't gratuitous fucking and sucking. It wasn't lascivious and licentiousness going down just for the sake of fucking and sucking. They were actually worshiping and paying homage through the act of sex. Now let me give you a little something. You see, in these temples, the temples that we just read that King Ahab set up for Baal, and then he set up the grove. We read about the grove. Inside those temples, they actually had women that got paid to fucking suck the parishioners, the laity, the common folk. Yeah, they did. Let me show you something. And so when we go back, this is what the Bible didn't teach you. I said we're in 1 Kings, okay? We're in 1 Kings. When we go back, and after Ahab marries Jezebel, it says he went and served Baal and worshipped him. How did Ahab worship Baal? It doesn't say. But I'm here to tell you how he worshiped. King Ahab, he worshipped Baal by sucking and fucking. That's what they were doing in those days. That was par for the course as a worshiper of Baal. It wasn't like you worship and go to church. They went into the synagogue. They went into the churches of the Baal god and they had sex. And so when it says that Ahab would worship Baal, that's a euphemistic language. A euphemism is nice language to say something really nasty. And so what it should say, and he went and served Baal, and he went and fucked and sucked in the temple to pay homage to Baal. That's what it really should say. And then it goes on to let us know that it wasn't just Baal. He reared up, he became a member. He actually built and reared up and constructed altars for Baal in the house of Baal. And it says that Ahab, he made a grove. Now you people are so smart. You know that the grove is another way of saying he made an Asherah or he made a pole. The grove represents the female deity, the pole, aka Asherah. I just showed it to you in the biblical encyclopedias. Got it? Now let me show you something. Because some of you may not have heard that. This might be a shock. It might be a shock to you. It might be a shock to you what entailed in worshiping Baal and the grove, the pole, or the goddess Asherah. What did that entail? Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to consult the scholar Merlin Stone. She wrote a wonderful book called When God Was a Woman. It's by a lady named Merlin Stone, the scholar. She wrote a book, When God Was a Woman, and she tells us what was going on in the houses of Baal and in the houses of the grove, the pole, Asherah. Let me show you. This is all about, see, people think they can teach about Jezebel. This is some teaching here for your ass. So we're going to go to about page 156. And trust me, everything I'm doing right now, I didn't even know where I was going today on this video. This is all just off the dome. About 156, I believe, if I remember right. 150 something. There it is. Here it is. And so, we're reading from When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone. You want to know, when you read this about King Ahab serving Baal and worshiping him, you want to know what he was getting? He was getting his dick sucked. He was getting his dick wet with pussy. He might have been getting his asshole blown out as well. You don't believe me? Let's go over here. Here you go. Here you go. Women who made love in the temples were known in their own language as sacred women, the undefiled. Their Akkadian name of Quadishtu is literally translated as sanctified women or holy women. See? There were women and men, by the way, but in this instance, there were women who made love, who sucked and fucked, who had sex, not outside, not at home, but in the temples. And they were known in their own language as whores, no, sacred women. As prostitutes, no, as sacred women. You see? They were also known as the undefiled. These women that were sucking and fucking were called the undefiled. They were also called sacred women. And in their Akkadian name, it was Kadishtu. And Kadishtu is literally translated as sanctified women or holy women. Wow, wow, wow. You see how the Bible misconstrues this religious practice that was going on? They didn't look at themselves as whores and prostitutes and sluts. They looked at themselves as sanctified women and holy women and sacred women. My goodness. And the undefiled. See right here? Now it goes on. Yet the sexual customs and even the most academic studies of the past 2 centuries were nearly always described as prostitutes. See? Academia, 19th and 20th century religious academia, they did not refer to these women as the undefiled. They did not refer to these women as sanctified women or holy women or sacred women. In academia, I'm talking about people that went to college. When they studied this stuff in academia for the last 200 years, they always described these same people as prostitution. The sacred women repeatedly referred to as temple prostitutes, and they were not, or ritual prostitutes. And then they go on. The use of the word prostitute as a translation for Quadishtu or sacred woman or the undefiled or sanctified woman or holy woman. The use of the word prostitute for those people not only negates the sanctity of that which was held sacred, but suggests by the inferences and social implications of the word an ethnocentric subjectivity on the part of the writer. Wow. It seems to me that the word prostitute entirely distorts the very meaning of the ancient customs which the writer is supposedly explaining. Right. Wow. Smart ones, you all got it. The dumb ones, I don't know about y'all. And so, when you hear these people calling them temple prostitutes, it's wrong. It's wrong. What a great read. Every woman should read this book. We're talking about Jezebel. Yes, we are. Have you learned something already? Of course you have. And so outside of the Bible, outside of the Hebrew Bible, outside of the Old Testament, you will never find these words, temple prostitute, cult prostitute. You won't find it. That language is ethnocentric. In other words, it's centered around the Jewish mind and the Jewish eye and the Israelite way of looking at other nations' religious practices. Isn't that a revelation? I said outside in all of the extra biblical commentary on these women that perform sex in the temple, you will not find the degrading and demeaning words like prostitute and whore and temple prostitute and cultic prostitute. Those are simply religious words from the mind of the Jews, of the Israelites, of the Hebrews. That's why, as a student of religion, you can't just read the King James Bible or just read the Bible, because the Bible makes these women out to be prostitutes. And when you hear the word prostitute, you think what you know in 2025, in the 21st century, you know what a prostitute is a woman that sells her vagina for money. But that's not what was going on in the Asherah temples, in the Asherah groves, amongst the poles, and with the Baal religions. They weren't selling their bodies for money. That is a misnomer. It is a misnomer to call their activities temple prostitution. And so, this is the world in which Jezebel was brought up, reared in, and this is the world that she supplants from Phoenicia to northern Israel. And the beauty of the story is that even though she got married to a Hebrew, to an Israelite, to a Jew king, she was not forced, she was not pressed, she was not asked to stop practicing the religion of the grove, the religion of the pole, the religion of Asherah. No, she wasn't. And what had happened was, once her husband converted, you know what they say, as the king converts, so go the people. A classic example is when we look at the Khazarian Empire in Eastern Europe. The people known as the Khazars, who turn out to be some of the early European Jews in history. So it was that this king of the Khazars was being pressured and pressed to conform to the Muslim caliphate in Baghdad, in Mecca and Medina, to join Islam. I'm talking about the Khazarian king. He was being pressured by the Muslim caliphate to join and become a Muslim on one side. On the other side, he was being pressured and pressed by the Byzantine popes to become a Catholic. And he had to make a decision. And he looked at Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And because the king of the Khazars did not want to be bound or a surrogate of the Muslim caliphate or the Byzantine Catholic Church, he looked at Judaism and said, wait a minute. Islam and the Byzantine Christianity are outgrowths of what Judaism produces. But Judaism had no head governing body. There was no pope that headed Judaism. There was no imam that headed Judaism. And so he said, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to convert to Judaism. Therefore, I won't be bound by a Christian Byzantine pope or a Muslim imam. I still maintain my autonomy, and I'm going to be all right. And he converted. And when he converted, a lot of the people converted. And so the Khazars, when the king converted, the people started converting. And that's where you get some of your more modern Jews that spring up from Eastern Europe via the Khazars. I relay that story because the same thing can be said with King Ahab. When King Ahab converted, many of the Jews, many of the Israelites, they too went as the king went. So much so that we have scriptures proving that the children of Israel started worshiping the Queen of Heaven. Who is the Queen of Heaven? The Queen of Heaven is Asherah. Let's close off with Jeremiah chapter 7. I'm proving that when King Ahab took on the wife of Queen Jezebel, so went the people. Here it is right here. The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto other gods, that they may provoke me to anger. See, let's go back. Seest thou not what they do in the cities of Judah? That's the Israelites, the Hebrews, and in the streets of Jerusalem. You want to know what they do? The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven. Who is the Queen of Heaven? The Queen of Heaven was the goddess that Jezebel worshipped. This is Jezebel's God. And we go over to Jeremiah 44, and we see the same thing. See? Same thing. But we will certainly do whatsoever thing go forth out of our own mouths to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her. As we have done, we and our fathers and our kings, like King Ahab, and our princes in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven. See? And when we burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, let me show you who she was real quick, because some of y'all be like, I don't know. You say that's the Queen of Heaven is Asherah. You say that's the same woman, the same goddess that Jezebel brought. Let's go look at it. And then we out. P-Q. Queen of Heaven. Who is the Queen of Heaven? We go back to Urban's Bible Dictionary, and we turn to the entry that we just read in Jeremiah chapter 7 and Jeremiah 44. Queen of heaven, a fertility deity worshipped by the people in Judah, and they give you the same scriptures, Jeremiah 7 and Jeremiah 44. But let's find her name. It tells you women in particular seem to have been involved in the veneration of the Queen of Heaven, offering cakes and libation, and burning incense, but the men and children participated as well. We read that in Jeremiah chapter 7. Let's see if they put a name with it. Let's see. The Queen of Heaven can be related to a number of ancient Near Eastern female deities, but the clearest connection is that in Assyria, Ishtar, okay, worship, okay, and then it goes back there, Asherah. See there? Asherah. Asherah. So now you know the Queen of Heaven is Asherah. That's right. Now, let me see. Okay. But let me just say this, and I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go out on this. The Queen of Heaven had many names. In Canaan, the one that Jezebel would bring was Asherah. Some also call her Ashtaroth. And since today is Easter, Asherah is also identified as Yester. Does it sound close to a word we know? Easter? I said the Queen of Heaven has many names. In Canaan, she was Ishtar. In Canaan, she was Asherah. Among the Slavs, she was Easter or Easter. Going back, she was also known in Egypt. She was known as Isis or Aset, the Queen of Heaven. Going back to the Babylonians, she was known as Ishtar. And going back further to the Sumerians, she was known as Inanna. So you have Inanna, Ishtar, Isis, Oester or Easter, and Asherah. That's 5 of them. They all were called the Queen of Heaven. Believe it or not, when the Catholic Church arose, they would also label the Virgin Mary as the Queen of Heaven. That's for another day. But thank you for watching. This is part 2. We got so much more. I'm giving you a solid background on what Queen Jezebel brought to the mix. The stuff that the Bible is just not going to give you. All right? Take care, and I love you all for a better world. Peace.